побачила, як летить ракета. І я почула це.
So we're going to morph that into the skiff on Tuesdays at 11 as you and I talk, and we're going to give updates on what's happening in country. So we talked earlier. Yesterday we had negotiations, or at least a phone call between Trump and Putin. Before that, there were negotiations in Istanbul. The Ukrainians were angry at the Russian position of essentially taking the territories in the east and security guarantees. And now Trump is out saying, well, we might just walk away from the whole thing. And it's really scaring the Europeans. And it's kind of what you and I said. We just have to back away from this and let this border war play itself out without all this foreign influence and proxy war and all this stuff. But what say you?
Yeah, I totally agree. Russia's position has not changed. It's been the same for at least a year. And, it rests on four key pillars: the territories, demilitarization of Ukraine. They're not going to leave Ukraine armed to the teeth and, preparing for a war 2 years from now. The denazification of Ukraine, which every Westerner should be also backing, because it's a real thing. And, to be on the side of Nazis is kind of ironic. We just celebrated the 80th anniversary of World War II. And then finally, no NATO involvement. And, on the Ukraine side, there's been absolutely no signs or signals that they're willing to compromise on any of those. We know that Zelensky is under the gun from the Nazis, who are now the most powerful element, certainly in the military, and the military is the most powerful institution in Ukraine.
And they're threatening the president, right? I mean, we think they're keeping the war. Part of the influence to keep the war going is the nationalist Nazi aspect, Azov battalions, etc., right sector, etc., is keeping the war going and pressuring the Zelensky to keep going, right?
Right. And it's kind of ironic. The war started because the neo-Nazis attacked eastern Ukraine, which is where all the ethnic Russians and the small Jewish population mostly lives in Ukraine. And the charter of the neo-Nazis is Ukraine for Ukrainians, pure blood only, which is farcical. There's no such thing. We're all from the same 100 or so humans who survived, 100,000 years ago, and have wandered all over the planet. So that's ironic. It's ironic that they began ethnic cleansing in eastern Ukraine, and that's why all of the oblasts and regions in questions voted for first just autonomy. They would have been happy with autonomy, but Ukraine wouldn't sign the Minsk agreements, and they turned that into independence and then secession and affiliation with Russia. So the people who live in those oblasts want to be part of Russia. And, these neo-Nazis, again, given what I just told you, are saying, this is a non-negotiable. We want those regions back. Well, they're not your regions, and people live there, and they don't want any part of Ukraine or the neo-Nazis anymore. So it's a central part of it. The negotiations is great. It's, we should all be proud that, it's our president and our country that's driving the peace talks. But at the same time, to make peace work, both sides, Russia and Ukraine, are going to have to make some serious concessions. And if we want to be the leaders of the peace talks, and if we want to make this happen, we need to lead by example. And the way to do that is to show that we're serious and make a concession ourselves. And that concession, you just said it, is pull all Americans out of Ukraine, specifically the American military that under the Biden administration has been running this war from 2022 forward. And I don't believe President Trump fully understands, our involvement, our micromanagement, and the implications of that. I don't believe that many of the advisors that he has are giving him good info. We talked about Kellogg and his 22-point plan that he made with Ukraine, not with Russia. I heard Sebastian Gorka go off the other day and say something completely ridiculous. President Trump needs new advisors. I think Marco Rubio is doing a great job. What Marco Rubio needs to do to set his own foundational knowledge of what's happened in that war is to declassify and read all the cables, and he doesn't need a lot, from November 1st of 2013 to April 1st of 2014, so he can see that it was us in the EU who overthrew the democratically elected government of Ukraine and then enabled the neo-Nazis to run in the power vacuum, the Ukrainian government, start the ethnic war, and provoke the Russians to invade in 2022. And, I think we have a few clips that underscore a lot of that, and and how important it is. And when we play these clips, remember, Russia understands what's happening. As I've said on your show in the past, I spend between an hour and 2 hours a day just on the frontline trace of the war. And I have commercial satellite feed, and I also have guys on the ground who validate what's happening. And there's no back and forth in this war. It's all back. Ukraine is being pushed back. Russia continues to gain. They've almost surrounded Pavlovsk at this point. They're very methodically moving around both sides, north and south of Pavlovsk. And it's nothing but progress. There's no human wave attacks, as the propaganda influencers try to continue to tell people. Russia's very methodical. They understand this is a light infantry war, and if you want to win, you've got to keep your experienced light infantrymen alive, because you can't shake and bake a light infantryman like Ukraine's trying to do.
Exactly. And, we talked, before we get to the clips, we talked about what one of the drivers behind the war is, the globalist agenda. And I see the EU wants this territory. They want the resources. They want the land. They want the port. But the EU is turning into very tyrannical, you could say fascist government, stopping people from, praying outside of a clinic, censoring, putting people in jail for Facebook posts, all this kind of stuff, banning Rumble in France. You could make a connection between that kind of Fourth Reich scenario into what's going on in Ukraine. I mean, that connection is there, right?
Definitely. Again, Todd, people need to understand the EU's motivation and why this started. We were carrying the water for the EU. And whenever I say I'm talking about the administrative government administrators under the Biden administration. What happened could never have happened under anything but that crazed administration with the incompetent people, Blinken, Austin, Jake Sullivan, and Joe Biden himself, who we now know every day becomes more and more of a fact to people who didn't believe that he was an illegitimate president too. Putin knows that. He said it in the beginning. But what they did and the senseless decisions they made were all at the behest of the EU. And the EU's motivation is simple. They want to be the biggest, most powerful political force and economic force in the world. They want to overtake the US, China, and India with their combined country GDP. They saw Ukraine as the great, the
The
carrot
great
on top of the
prize.
cake.
Yeah.
Yes, for its agriculture, its natural resources, and of course its geography, its port on the Black Sea. And that's why they were so committed to this. That's why they still are. The first rule of digging a bad hole is stop digging, but senseless people don't get that. They just keep digging, and that's what they're doing. The EU does not want to admit they were wrong. They want Ukraine to fight to the last Ukrainian, and hopefully something will happen. And
Well, then they can make it the first African country in Europe. They can import all these people if the Ukrainians are gone,
that's an actual plan. That's an actual
Yeah.
plan. They've already stated that too. So it's you would never believe it if it was written in a book, but that's what kind of leaders all these. I mentioned all those people in the Biden administration, and it's the same. Ursula von der Leyen. They
Yeah.
have no real world experience. They're global elitists who've never done anything, who've never gotten their hands dirty, never worked in a grocery store, never been in the military,
Yes.
never traveled internationally on their own or trying to do a business deal
Right.
internationally. So they just don't understand the human dynamic or how the real world works. And
Well, they may have this agenda to get more powerful, but it's going the other way. I mean, they've destroyed their industry, their manufacturing, their energy sources. It's just, going backwards. So, and they're losing this conflict. But then you get the what are they going to do to, France and Britain are talking about nuclear weapons. I mean, it's insane. I mean, you had Macron saying we're going to give Germany our nuclear weapon umbrella yesterday. I mean, it's insane. Well, which ones did you want to bring up? We have the
go ahead and
articles.
bring up. Yeah, let's go first with the conscription, and then we'll go to
We showed this yesterday. I'm going to show this one short tape, and then we're going to do a longer one. But just warn the audience, it's a little disturbing if you have kids around. But here we go.
Боже. Вызывайте скорую. Кошмар.
So that was just one where the bounty hunters tried to pull these guys off the street. He resisted, so they hit him in the head and obviously hurt him badly, and it looks like he died. But we have another tape, which is the some more conscription videos, which I'll show now. Wrong one. Sorry about that.
A Kalashnikov cocked at a father and child. Military recruiters storming gyms, threatening men with the loss of their parental rights. The war for Ukraine's survival has taken an internal turn, and it's growing darker. These are not scenes from a dystopian screenplay. They're real incidents emerging from present-day Ukraine, where a desperate drive for manpower is pushing the state's mobilization machine into increasingly coercive and, in some cases, brutal territory. One viral clip shows Ukrainian recruitment officers confronting a father, walking with his young son. As tensions escalated, an officer pointed a rifle at the pair, until shocked bystanders stepped in and beat the recruiters, an act many saw as the public's breaking point in a long-growing resentment toward forced conscription.
It's a great summary.
Disturbing encounter shared by Sputnik.
Yes. I'll send it back to you.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's so important, and this is why your show is so important, Todd. No one saw that who watches Western mainstream media. That won't make any of the networks, any of the BBC, the international mainstream media. But that's reality right there. And, in these times where we're drowning in propaganda, you have to believe that you got to make your decisions off reality. And so don't dismiss that. You saw just a panoply of clips there of these recruiters beating, killing, and threatening people to join the Ukrainian military, forced conscription. I believe never in the history of modern war has a country won a war that had to force people to fight. I don't believe
people have seen the movie with Nicole Kidman and about Cold Mountain.
We recommend you take this moment to do what we're about to do, which is enjoy an Alp.
This is a special report.
Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At U.S. Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. U.S. Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
Your government doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
The same thing. South was doing the same thing, conscripting people brutally, and you're right, they lost, because when you get to that point, the motivation, to win is gone, right?
Well, yeah, it's the motivation, but it's also that the people know, and what's so important about that one clip where the guy lifts the assault weapon above his head and then is attacked by bystanders. The narrator sums it up perfectly. He says, this is a breaking point. The people bystanders are starting to jump in, attacking government officials with weapons who are trying to force these individuals into the military. So, the first thing I'd say about the ridiculousness of this and the senselessness is you don't want those guys fighting on your front line. So
you don't want to be in a foxhole with some guy who's going to frag you, right?
Right. You can't win. But the second thing is the people understand what's happening in this war. They understand the senselessness. They understand that they've got a president they did not vote for, who is more akin to, compared to a king. He's more of a monarch than a president. He's an actor comedian with, again, no qualifications in the real world. And they know that. But both the citizens and the soldiers of Ukraine are trapped. They have no voice. All of Ukrainian media is controlled by the Ukrainian government. And you're seeing this uprising now, which happens no matter where you are. Humans are humans. We have empathy, we have compassion, and we want to be free. And so when they see what's happening and understand the background and understand how many men and how many Gold Star families are all around them that will have a hole in their heart for the rest of their lives because fathers, brothers, sons are all dead. You're seeing the breaking point, and Russia knows that too. So you see those tapes from the Russian side. Russia is turning recruits away, and again, you mentioned earlier the opposite of what all of these global elitists wanted to happen has happened. Russia is the most united country on. It's not hyperbolic to say on earth right now. They're the proudest of their country. They feel the most close-knit, and they're not a homogenous demographic either. They're not even religiously. As we mentioned on last show, it's the first time I've ever seen Christians and Muslims fighting together and fighting together in a highly motivated fashion and highly effective fashion. So, the reality, the great thing about your show is it's a behind the curtains peek at reality that everyone needs to internalize. And I hope that President Trump's advisors see this also and internalize it, because Russia knows it too. So I mentioned the citizens; those are the citizens. Next, let's go to the soldiers,
Let me
who
just
also
read
have no
something.
voice.
Let me just read something. I received that first video we showed from a source in Kiev, and he said bounty hunters hit the man in the head. He started collapsing. They threw him on the ground and drove away. In Odessa, similar accidents happen every day in all cities every day. It's staged slaughter. It's a kill a men slaughter theater. Somewhat broken English here. I'm desperate. I am crying. I am crying for the thousands of dead. I am crying for the years wasted. I'm crying because of the years of lying to normal, adequate people who just wanted to live simple life and raise their kids. I mean, that's what's going on in Ukraine. So anyway,
Yep.
what did you want? Where did you want to go next?
Yeah, so we mentioned citizens and soldiers have no voice. They're crying out for help. Those are the citizens. Let's go to the soldiers. We just had a battalion commander from the 47th Brigade, Magura, resign. And it's a little tough for me to see that, but I'll just read first what he says. And his name is Alexander Shurskin, as I mentioned, from the 47th Separate Mechanized Brigade. And here's what he said. He stated that the assigned combat missions were inappropriate, the personnel losses were unjustifiably high, and the systematic incompetence of the command, according to him, instead of effectively managing the situation on the ground, all the leadership are capable of is reprimands, internal investigations, and disciplinary sanctions. Their political games and understanding of the real situation have nothing to do with reality, and they have completely lost touch with reality, Shearskin emphasized. So this was also published in Ukraine news, which is incredible. It shows you, again, what's happening. For the Ukrainians to publish it is amazing. But there's nothing new about this. And we've talked about before, I have a number of articles on Substack, peteblaber.substack.com. One is what's wrong with the Ukrainian military. The other one is, Dear President Trump, it's time to pull all American forces out of Ukraine. And so just to that battalion commander's points, and I should add, he was part of the counteroffensive into Kursk, where Ukraine lost 69,000 men, 11,000 more than we lost in the Vietnam War. And he's also part of the Pavlovsk defense, which is right now in the process of being surrounded. So is this something new? No, it's not. Let's go back to 2021, where a guy named Glenn Grant, the first military and lead advisor of the Ukraine military in 2014, and then served continuously all the way to 2021, loves Ukraine, loves Ukrainians, cares deeply about the military, wrote a full report titled Why the Ukrainian Defense System Fails to Reform and Why U.S. Support is Less Than Optimal and What We Can Do Better. And I'm going to read you one paragraph from that. 7 years of NATO reorganization, 2014 to 2021, and indoctrination created a Ukrainian military culture of blind obedience and negative reinforcement. The consequences on the battlefield are devastating. Soldiers won't act without orders for fear of punishment. Decisions, even for the purchase of socks, are always made at the highest level. Ukrainian army generals and politicians operating out of Kyiv micromanage their battlefield forces down to the platoon level. So that was 2021. We also just had the New York Times publish a 10,000 word feature article called The Secret History of the War in Ukraine, the untold story of American and British military role in the war in Ukraine. And I wrote an article on that, but I want to read a couple quick excerpts out of that. The secret location where NATO and Ukraine partnership commanded and controlled all combat operations was at the U.S. Army garrison in Wiesbaden, Germany, located 1,400 miles from the front lines and known as the Fusion Center. They are still there today. They're still commanding and controlling. A vast American intelligence collection effort both guided big picture battle strategy and funneled precise targeting information down to Ukrainian soldiers in the field. And now I want to connect the two. The lesson and the historical takeaway from what this battalion commander is crying out for people to listen to today, and what veterans of the global war against terrorists on the American side after 20 years in Afghanistan and Iraq, is that hierarchical decision making by disconnected chains of command never has and never will make sense of any situation that entail any degree of complexity, i.e. war. The higher the degree of complexity, the more senseless the detached hierarchy gets. The logic of why is self-evident, and we need to internalize this. The purpose of our nervous system is to make sense of what's going on around us and sensible choices about what to do next. And the only way our nervous system works is through our senses: sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell. If you aren't in touch with the environment, you can't make sense of it. And if you're trying to make sense from 1,400 miles away in Wiesbaden or 300 to 600 miles away in Kyiv, the decisions you're making are senseless. And you know, sometimes I'm very hopeful that people are reading these. I know my buddies on the ground are spreading the word around, but let's just go back to that last sentence that the battalion commander who resigned said, and that is this: they have completely lost touch with reality. They have no understanding of the real situation, which has nothing to do with reality. And that's what's going on. And again, tying all of it back to the peace talks, the Ukrainian citizens and soldiers have no voice. They're being led to slaughter by incompetent generals and incompetent US and EU overlords who are fine with fighting to the last Ukrainian. These peace talks are serious. And again, if we want the U.S. to lead these peace talks, we need to lead by example, make the first concession, which is pull all U.S. personnel out of Ukraine and save the rest of Ukraine and the rest of the Ukrainians.
Well, the Blob generals, you sent me this, David Petraeus. I mean, talking about just not reality. I mean, this is a narrative push if I've ever seen one, right?
Yeah, and I wish, you know, maybe next show will show. Have you seen Mariupol? It's gorgeous. They've almost rebuilt it. Russia has. There's no forcible deporting of civilians. You can watch on videotape. The Russians, for instance, in Kursk, went house to house. Most of the people who stayed are the people who stay in any country on earth, the old people. These are pensioners. They have no money. They have no relatives left. They're not going to leave their house. But the Russians went house to house after they retook Kursk and said, please come with us. We want to feed you. And most of them still stayed. So they give them, you know, food. They give them sustainment packages. There's no forceful repatriation of people out of those regions. So, you know, and there was no substance to that. I just, you know, when I read that the first time, I was like, wow, talk about grasping for straws and saying nothing in the process of doing it. But that's what we're up against, this propaganda machine of paid influencers who, for some reason, have thrown their lot in with the global elitists and are fine with Ukraine fighting to the last Ukrainian and the last inch of their country.
You know, I want to make a quick point. I spent a lot of time in Ukraine, as you did, and this is an article. I took a train from Kiev to Mariupol. This was in 2015. Incredibly beautiful city. You know, and the people are what amazed me. I mean, and I just wrote this because this was a guy's playing chess in the park. You know, this is look at this picture. I mean, it's a grandmother, babushka, taking her, you know, granddaughter to to school. The Ukrainian people are wonderful, and
Yeah, they
and
are.
we destroyed it
Yeah.
intentionally, in my view, and it's just horrific what's been done. But you can find this on our Eastern European site, tsarizm.com, tsarizm.com. Great, Pete. Anything else you want to get out?
No, that's it for today.
Okay, we'll see you next Tuesday at 11 on Ukraine SitRep, which is our normal schedule. So check us back then to see Pete, and we'll be back after this break. Thank you.